Obviously, each and every one of you has heard the word case in different contexts. Case in syntax or grammar, morphosyntax, has its own meaning. Let me show you how. So let me start with a simple sentence in English. I see him. Him, third person singular, but third person singular is he, but then why is it him here? Like you could say he sees me, and then me, which is first person singular of I, which is supposed to be I, suddenly changes to me. So why is it that I changes to me and he changes to him? Well, the easy answer is that I is the subject and him is the object. So this is something that you learn in basic grammar. So you cannot say I see he or he see I. You don't say that. Although in some languages you may be able to do that. But in English you don't. So in this case you have case. When you say I see him or he sees me, the two individuals involved in this act of seeing are the same. But the roles change. So in the first sentence, the subject is first person singular. And the object is third person singular. And you could add male. Then I doesn't have gender. You see how many pieces of information is packed in one vowel, basically, I. It could be male or female. So what is the role here? The role is the subject. What is the role? Is the object. Or in semantics, we say agent. This is patient. So patient is the one that undergoes the act of seeing, and agent is the one that conducts the act of seeing. It's the subject happens to be the agent, the case. But whether it's the agent or not, it is not relevant. All that matters is the role in the sentence. It is the role that determines whether I say I or me. That's why we say I see him. We don't say I see he. But then in this sentence, I see you, you see me. In this one, you is the object. In this one, you is the subject. The role changes from object to subject. The form does not change. Let's put it this way. The role that it takes in the sentence, subject or object, that is called the case. Whether it is reflected or not in the form, so case can be morphologically expressed. It may also not be morphologically expressed. What this means is that in English, so sometimes you express it morphologically, sometimes you do not. In the sentence, you see me, we know from the word order that you is the subject, and in the sentence, I see you, we know from the word order that you is the object. So it's just the word order that tells us which one has what case. But in the case of other pronouns like he, him, I, me, the morphology also gives us that information. It's not just the word order. In more technical language, instead of the word subject, you can use the word nominative. And instead of object, you can use the word accusative. And instead of indirect object, you can use dative. This is case terminology. And there's more words. There are more cases. Not necessarily in English, across languages. You see, I see him, subject, direct object. He sees me, subject, direct object. I'm doing this for us, subject, indirect object. Why? Because there's for preposition. So us is the object of preposition. And here we are doing this for me, subject, indirect object. So what is case? Case is a grammatical category that helps us to analyze the syntactic relationship. In both cases, I and me, both of them are first person singular. But when you talk about subject and object, it's not about what is in the word. It's about how it relates to other words in the sentence. So it's about the syntactic relationship between words in a sentence. A case may be nominative, accusative, dative. We have other cases like genitive, we have ablative, etc. In English, there is a very limited case morphology, and it's only reflected in the pronouns. For example, when I say, I saw Louis, Louis saw me. The word Louis, depending on whether it's object or subject, does not change form. It always stays Louis. In some languages, that may not be the case. Like, they have a lot more case morphology than English. If you want to talk about case, probably a good language to show what case is German. Now I'm going to give you an example of dative from German. I'm sitting next to the window. Ich sitze neben. Neben is the preposition. The preposition neben requires, which is next, requires a dative case. So the word Fenster is declined. Do you remember decline, deklinieren in German? So I have this video about inflection, declension, and conjugation. So when you say, I sit next to the window, here the word next requires a dative case, which is indicated by declining the article, dem Fenster. It is dem because it's dative. And here, statt, it's a different gender, therefore the dative form is der. I was in the city. You see, the indirect object in the city. So this indirect object requires a dative case. What about genitive? For example, John's car. Here, John's, it has a case which is called genitive. I'm going to give you another example. Genitive, or in German Genitiv, shows possession. Die Größe des Computers. Here, the word is computer. The word is computer, but because it's genitive, it takes this S, and then this is also morphological markers of genitive in German. The size of the computer. It makes computer genitive, computer. Therefore, in this sentence, the word the computer is in the genitive case. In English, there's no morphology on it, but in German, there is this S that indicates its genitive and also the article. In English, when you say the doctors, in English is genitive. There's this S that indicates the case. In German, this one, this and this part, the article, indicate the genitive. Die Schwester des Arztes, the doctor's sister. Also, the order is different. Hilft manchmal in der Sprechstunde. The doctor's sister helps him in the surgery sometimes. I hope the sister is also a doctor. In the traditional classification of case in Latin grammar, words taken on various morphological forms, and when I say form with a PH, I'm just being humorous because I mean forms. Depending on the case of the word. For example, the word girl in Latin can be puella. I mean, I don't know how horrible my Latin pronunciation is. Puella, puellam, puellai, or puella. So these are different cases of the word puella, which means girl. Depending on the case, depending on the role and how it relates to the other words in the sentence, the word puella changes morphology, changes form. What are the cases here? Nominative, vocative, or vocative. It means puella is both nominative and vocative. And then accusative and genitive, or dative and ablative respectively. So these are only the forms for the singular. Then in the plural, you have to decline the word further. English may be said to have case in pronoun system, but not for the nouns, because English nouns are not inflected for case. Even in the case of genitive, possessive of say, boy, which is boys, as in the boy's bicycle, the S is simply a clitic that attaches to boy. English lacks morphological variation caused by case. Modern grammars of English usually criticize traditional grammars because of applying traditional concepts of Latin to the analysis of English, including the notion of case. So if you look at traditional grammars of English, they take the word case very seriously when they're talking about English. That's because of the influence of the Latin language. And that's not something that is acceptable in modern linguistics, because in modern linguistics, we study every language for itself and by itself, not because of another language. And there's a notion of case that we can imagine that every word in a sentence has a role regardless of its form. That's a different thing, but I'm talking about case morphology. Whether the role affects the form, case does not just apply to dead languages like Latin. There are still languages with highly complex morphological systems based on case. Finnish, the Finnish language, for example, has 16 cases, oh my gosh, which includes such cases as inessive, in a place, elative from inside and elative. So depending, you see, like into, from inside, in. Depending on each of these, you would use a different form of the word. Here you can see that there are declension classes in Latin, 6 different declension classes. These are declension classes. The paradigms, it means, if you look at this table and look at the word for mensa, which is table, may have a singular or plural form, but in each of these still may have 6 cases. This table is telling you how you can decline all these word classes. Lupus wolf, for example. The wolf saw me. So in that sentence, lupus would be subject. It would be nominative. Lupus saw me. But if I want to say I saw the wolf, I should say I saw lupum. And then I talked to the wolf. I talked to lupo. I talked to the wolves. I talked to the lupis. Yeah, so this is the hypothetical use of the word wolf in singular or plural, depending on a case, if I put them in an English sentence. Obviously, these are just the nouns. You need to know about the pronouns in Latin, Latin personal pronouns. Hopefully this explains what it means and why it's important to know about case. There is this important thing that you need to take into consideration when you talk about case. You must make a distinction between case morphology and the notion of case in general. There is another approach to the understanding of case, which is case with a capital C, or it's also called abstract case or deep case, which is done in generative linguistics. And that's the idea, the abstract notion of case semantically, deep case, is distinct from more morphologically marked case. The point here is, even if you don't have any morphology, the form of the word doesn't change, the case changes depending on its role in the sentence. This is applied to the analysis of words in languages that have no morphological variations for case, such as Chinese. So case theory has been developed, and it is one of the sub-theories in government binding theory. And it deals with the assignment of abstract case or deep case and its morphological realizations, whether present or absent.